Hi, this is Christy Callahan with Chubby Lotus Yoga. Today we're talking about empathy and the desperate need for empathy to be a size-inclusive yoga teacher and why it is so extremely relevant. So I want to start out with this great quote that I found, and I'm having to read from my notes because I have a lot to say. One does not have to operate with great malice to do great harm. The absence of empathy and understanding are sufficient. That quote is by Charles M. Blow. The Oxford Dictionary defines empathy as the ability to imagine and understand the thoughts, perspectives, and emotions of another person. Listen to that in contrast with the definition for sympathy, which is, according to Oxford Dictionary, defined as feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. So these are often used interchangeably, but they are completely different. They are not the same at all. So your plus size students, the reason we're talking about empathy and the reason I'm defining it for you is because your larger bodied students don't need your sympathy. There's nothing wrong with their body, but they do need, we, as I'm a student as well, need the teacher to have empathy, but that means just to understand what my journey is looking like and why it looks different from yours and maybe your smaller bodied yoga students. So this is really what empathy means. It's being able to be in the trenches with me to understand what I'm going through, what my barriers, my physical barriers and emotional barriers might look like in practice. So it's really important to touch on this. And I always feel a little bit of anxiety talking about empathy because I think for your students, because I think when people first hear that term, a lot of times they mix it up with sympathy and think that I'm saying you need to be sympathetic to your larger body students. No, that is not what I'm saying at all. We don't need your pity. We don't welcome your pity. So it's just really important to understand the differentiation. In our current culture, we tend to have sympathy for larger bodied people because culturally we are taught to value thinness, for lack of a better word, above all else, above health. We are not taught to value wellness, and there's a big difference. So, a good way to think about this is think about all the 0-calorie foods you see in the market. And I'm not talking about like lettuce. I'm talking about like dressings. There's a particular brand that creates a whole line of condiments, and they're all 0-calorie. But if you look at the ingredients, you won't recognize a single word other than maybe water. But it's just a bunch of chemicals created to make a texture and a flavor. So this says a lot about our culture's view of thinness in relation to health. So our goal is not health, our goal is thinness. And so this is perpetuated by the media, social media. When you see a larger body person in a movie or a TV show, it's starting to change a little bit now, but traditionally they've been the funny fat friend, awkward, insecure, gross, binging and eating is their whole life and, making jokes of themselves. That's how we have been shown larger bodied people. And so the imagery is something to be sorry for, like, oh, your fat friend, right? Like that's what we have received. So the thin person is the star, the main character, the beautiful ethereal being. And so obviously this is a very obvious message, right? It's not coming out and saying it, but we don't need people to tell us what they're telling us, right? It's just very obvious. And yoga has been this way. I should say yoga has been this way in the West. It's perpetuated this narrative that yoga is for thin, white students, right? Thin white women, to be specific. That's what we see on the cover of yoga magazines. That's what we see all over social media. This is the image that we have. So it has not been a space that has been welcoming for your plus size or larger bodied students. And other types of students as well, but my area is in the larger bodies, so that's what I'm talking about. So I think it's really important to understand that this mindset is ingrained in us. So when your larger bodied students are coming into class, there is going to be elements of being maybe feeling unwelcome, feeling like yoga's not for them. Being in a studio maybe isn't for them. Maybe it took a lot for them to even come to a physical location. So this is really extremely important, and we'll get into some of this a little bit later as well, why this is so relevant. But if you want to learn how to truly be a size-inclusive yoga teacher, you have to be willing as well to look at your own mindset and shift some of your more commonplace types of thinking or beliefs based on what the current culture is. There's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed of, but there is a level of fat phobia that exists in most people. We can't help it. That's what has been, pushed into our brains since we've been very young. And so we're just going to take a look at some of those beliefs through this training and try to undo that and unravel that. Because one thing we need is the yoga teachers, we cannot have a place of judgment for other people's bodies. And I'll be talking about that a lot in some different contexts later in some of the training. But it's really important of what your students are coming in with and what your beliefs are. And then we're going to talk about how to make it a safer place for your students. So I hope you'll stay tuned. That's your first little lesson. I'm going to be talking about, my next lesson is why there's trauma and the social impacts. So yay! I will see you in the next training. Don't forget, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to hear back from you. Like this, please share this. I'm trying to get this training out here for free. So while I have it up here for free, please take advantage of that and share that with other people. All right, I will see you soon.